Hi, I'm author Harper McDavid, here to talk about my book Zapata, which was the winner in the romance division for Colorado Authors League Book Award last year in 2020. Zapata happened to be the Colorado Book Award winner also in 2020. Zapata is a romantic suspense, and it is set in the actual town of Zapata, which is on the Texas-Mexico border. And my protagonist is a woman named Avery. She's an engineer, works in oil and gas, given the assignment to fix a problem at an oil facility down there, and she is ill prepared for the job. Not technically, but she doesn't really understand the nature of things on the border. So I'm going to read you a little bit from my book, and I hope you enjoy it. Avery clipped Derek's engineering schematics in her field notebook. Following the two men through the gate, she glanced over her shoulder to see Bruce still in the SUV. So much for her security detail. Once inside the fenced area, she climbed over the berm, designed to contain fluids in the event of spills or leaks. Hector and Manuel followed in silence. She studied the area. The soil showed no evidence of dark stains, which would be indicative of sizable crude oil spills or leaks. She turned to Hector. I understand production rates are down. Is that true with specific wells, or... She hoped he might help her out, but he only nodded. You do have production numbers for the individual wells, don't you? Hector turned away. Maybe he did deserve to lose his job. She sighed. I'm going to walk the production line over to the tanks. The facility was relatively small, no more than a few acres. Between aerial photos and site schematics, she had no difficulty following the line between the array of small and large storage tanks. The soil was clean. She checked the valves, circled each tank, and then retraced her steps. Hector, he kept his distance, standing at the edge of the berm. Can you tell me what this is for? She pointed at a valve in the production line, so inconspicuous she'd missed it on her first pass. Underneath it was a small patch of soil. It was stained with crude. It's not in any of my drawings. He approached slowly. Security valve. A security valve? She tilted her head. I'm not sure I understand. Collection point for protection, he mumbled. It still made no sense, but before she could try to force an explanation out of him, he had turned away. There was a slam of car doors, and Hector hustled over the berm. A voice rang out beyond the gate, calling his name. Manuel crouched down next to her, inspecting the valve. Is that where the problem is? It's a problem for sure. You can see whoever installed it just basically cut into the line, and they did a really sloppy job. But even if it's leaking, it's not enough to explain how they're ending up so short each month, she said. Well, well, what do we have here? A voice said. Two men sauntered in their direction. Avery glanced at Manuel for an explanation, but he seemed as clueless as she. Both men wore tailored dress shirts, untucked, open at the collar, and mirrored aviators. GQ all the way. The taller of the two men paused at the top of the berm, peering down at them. Bruce lingered behind, barely inside the gate. The smaller man continued over the berm in their direction. Even from this distance, he struck her as pampered. His lower lip jutted out defiantly as he approached. Hector... His tone was a scolding taunt. You didn't tell us you were entertaining. His gaze rested on Avery. We would have been here earlier. He kicked at the ground with expensive Italian loafers. Please join us down here, Hector. A sneer crossed his face as he took obvious pleasure in watching Hector struggle to scramble over the berm. The man clapped his hands and said, Now who'd like to explain what the nature of our little gathering is all about? Avery's shoulders tightened. This guy was deranged. Who was he? And how was it that he felt entitled to walk on Rockforth property in such a manner? She glanced at her so-called security detail and site superintendent. Never before had she seen 3 people more interested in their own shoes. She sighed. Dealing with this guy would obviously fall to her. She stepped forward. "Hi, I'm Avery McAndrews with Fenster Engineering." Her words came out a little faster than she'd intended, though her hand remained steady as she held out a business card. The man snorted dismissively and made no effort to take it. "I'm in the process of conducting a facility inspection. It was arranged by Mr. Rockforth's office. And I'm sorry, but I don't know who you are." Despite her declaration otherwise, she was afraid she knew exactly who these 2 were. Their tailored clothes, expensive haircuts, made her think of Bruce's words, drug lords. She shifted her attention to the tall man, broad-shouldered and nothing like his fidgety partner. He stood with his arms crossed and a lizard boot resting on an overturned bucket. Even through his sunglasses, she felt his gaze calm and controlled. Irrationally, she felt a tinge of disappointment in his career choice. He was easily the best-looking man she'd ever seen. Meanwhile, the smaller man made a series of pronouncements in Spanish. Hector stared at the ground, blinking as if he were about to cry. The man repeated himself a second time, louder and sounding angry. Hector turned to Avery and pointed to the crazy man. "His name is Javier Ramos, and he says to tell you he doesn't like redheads." Her blood surged, and she felt her face growing hot. She turned to the cocky little man. "And I don't like people who can't speak for themselves. Is the name Javier Ramos supposed to mean something?" For a moment, no one moved. She held her breath, wishing she could take it back. But she never could shut her mouth when she was angry. Her eyes shifted to Javier's partner. Was it her imagination, or was he shaking his head? It was subtle, but now she was sure of it. And it wasn't a threat. It was a warning. He was telling her to back off. Thanks for listening to this, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like a copy of Zapata, it's available where books are sold. Thank you.